The following is a list of Moors who have been kidnapped and are being held for a demand of income. The demand of income is being made against the family as well as through fraudulent submissions of documents alleging that they are being cared for in some sort of long-term care fashion. These Moors have been kidnapped literally off the land by employees of various corporations guised as county, city, township boroughs. These names that we have all been mentally conditioned to believe are government are not. They are exactly what they say they are. They are municipal corporations. And as such, they, if you do the research, you will find that they are foreign corporations on American soil. Therefore, they do not have standing nor jurisdiction to make a demand of income from the Aboriginal, indigenous people, or any people on American soil. This making their actions criminal. However, as Moors, we must bring these crimes to the forefront via civil complaints against these unalienable Constitution treaty secured rights of the people, Aboriginal indigenous Moors. So we start off with our sister Abkare Bay, who was kidnapped through a joint venture between Memphis Corporation and Shelby Corporation under the purview of Tennessee. Now we say under the purview of Tennessee, which is a union state, because every union state is bound and obligated to protect the people from foreign and domestic invasion. We then have Daoud Ill under the purview of Arkansas, Amir Muslimin Ill under the purview of Missouri, as well as Kush Ra Kush Bay. We have Asar Patar Amin Ra under the purview of Ohio. And if we don't have the municipal corporation, the ones that did the kidnapping, the employees that did the kidnapping, we just reference the union state that is bound and obligated to protect the people. We have Jeremy Paler Ill, Terry Thorne Bay, J. McCall Brooks Bay, Joseph Canaday Ill, Kush Amir Bunch Ill, Emmanuel Billings Bay, Yassin Khalik Alamin Ill, and Michael Curry Bay, all being held under the purview of North Carolina. Noble Crisco Ill, being held under the purview of New Jersey. Messiah Aziz Ill and Crystal Ill, being held through a joint venture between Mercer, Freehold, and Trenton Corporation under the purview of New Jersey. We're still waiting on an update regarding the Patricia Bay's infant baby kidnapped by Atlantic Corporation under the purview of New Jersey. Eldridge Teron Fisher Ill and Marquis Sevion Ill under the purview of Indiana. Solomon Ill Bay and Mumi Abu Bay under the purview of Texas. William Barrett Ill and Bomani Abidwell Ill, William Barrett A. kidnapped under the purview of Virginia, and Bomani Abidwell Ill kidnapped by Chesapeake Corporation under the purview of Virginia, Cherry Bay under the purview of West Virginia, Thomas Lee Bay under the purview of California, Victor Eduardo Juarez Ill, kidnapped under the purview of Harlem, under the purview of Georgia, Natural Tahuti Ill, kidnapped by Benner Corporation under the purview of Pennsylvania Corporation, and then Rennie Bay, kidnapped by Hamilton Corporation under the purview of Ontario, which is a subcorporation of Canada. All right. There we have Moors who have been kidnapped and are being held hostage by employees of various corporations on American soil, which is in violation of the American Constitution, and it is a treaty violation. And being that we're talking about Moorish Americans, Aboriginal Indigenous on this land, who are being kidnapped by foreign, or rather employees of a foreign corporation on American soil, this makes this an international issue, because you have two nations with one nation warring against another. Therefore, this is an international issue. If you have a family member near or far of your immediate family or one of the family that you know and you would like them added to this list, please send an email to MHHS-Eyes-Wide-Open@gmail.com, and in the subject line put Kidnap Moor, and please provide us with their free national appellation, the municipal corporation that the employee is operating through that kidnapped them, along with the union state that they are in, that corporation is in purview to. All right? Thank you very much.
Right. Islam. Welcome to MHHS-Eyes Wide Open. This is your host, Anita L., along with my co-host, Ms. Ryan Alice L.
Peace and love, Anita. Peace and love, Mom. Peace and love, Moors worldwide.
All right. Yeah. And Rosemary Bay.
Islam, peace and love to all.
Islam. We do not have Cujo tonight, unless something it's said that he feels compelled to maybe chime in on. We don't necessarily have Cujo, things that he needs to take care of.
Yeah. And big acknowledgement to Cujo, too, because we missed on Thursday. He was chopping in and out. I know he went in tonight. But congratulations to our brethren with his YouTube fully active again. So those
all
long
right.
videos.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. No wonder he's just standing by. You know what? He does his class on the prior to this one.
This broadcast, yeah.
Yeah, his broadcast. And, as you know, depending on how the spirit is and how it's going, you can be literally drained after demonstrating, literally drained. So, I know he's there listening, and whenever he can join in or whatever, we absolutely appreciate it. We definitely understand about the draining because it happens that way sometimes.
Quite frequently.
Like tonight. I think we're going to get drained tonight. We got a lot to share.
Yes, we do. And so before we get started, just send a big shout out to our internet listeners. The chat room is open. And big shout out to our internet listeners listening from over near the Great Britain Corporation, Islam Moors, as well as Moors listening over near the South Africa Corporation, because, these are all corporations. This is not the land. These are corporations on the land, all right? To the Moors listening over near the Japan Corporation, the Philippine Corporation, Moors listening near the Mexico Corporation, Venezuela Corporation, Brazil Corporation, Cuba Corporation, and Moors that we have yet to link up with, Islam. And thank you so much for listening. Big shout out to our callers. Thank you so much for joining us every week, filling up the phone lines before the broadcast even begins. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And also thank you for sharing, lending your energy, doing research, bringing information to the family so that we can all get the information, absorb it, and do what we need to with it. Islam, Islam, Islam.
Which is what we do. That's all we do. That's what we do. Offer that information. What you do with it is up to you. But we hope you join with family. And recognize. Well, I don't know how you want to start the show, but go ahead. I got my stuff written down.
I ran it past Miz before we, I think I'm good. So let us get started.
You making me think of high school. You're making me think of high school right now. When you were at the basketball game, we used to say, "Let's get started already. Let's get started."
Tonight's podcast was inspired by, an event that happened to me today, because I had this little civil issue in court this way, and it's been an adventure. And, it's been an adventure. It's been informative. And I will be sharing it probably in more of a private, intimate session, not over the air. So, we'll let you know about that.
Can I just interject something here? I heard what you said, and because it's actual stuff. Now, people think that when you say that means you're trying to keep something from them. But it is not that at all.
No.
Because the experience is something that you would first have to have on your dial plate to be able to receive it without taking it and turning it into the feudal European system, as an example, without taking information, thinking that you're getting started somewhere and create a vital statistic or create some registry shit. This is all, we take stuff and, we just will not stand as family. We will not stand as under the American law. We'll stand on the British law, English law. We just refuse to do that. And we don't recognize that the reason the Constitution was established as the law of this land is to protect us from the molestation of other citizens. Instead, we get a hold of the right. And then another thing, if I may add, for that other lower level of people, because they're always concentrating on what you do or what somebody else is doing instead of what they're doing, they'll try to take whatever you share and use it against you or call people up. Like if you gave them point for point some stuff, they'll get on the phone and call up the company you dealt with. Well, how come Robin Ryan Ray did it and I'm not doing it? It ain't right. That's how stupid silly our people act most of the time.
Yeah. Well,
Isn't that crazy?
Mental conditioning. That is mental conditioning. And you know what? Look, people, they talk about submitting to the will of Allah, and what I have learned from this particular adventure is that, the will of Allah for me, and, it could be whatever you want. I personally believe that it's nothing. It could be your higher self. It could be some energies, that are out there, that are working, to help all people free themselves mentally. But you have to submit. You have to submit to the will of Allah and allow that energy to guide you. If you think that this is all about you, and if you think that the things that happen is to gratify your ego, you are so highly mistaken. Which is, I can't wait to be able to share it with people, because it was an absolute revelation, which is what brought me to talk about certain things tonight. As I felt like I had a kind of epiphany, even though it wasn't really an epiphany. It was just an affirming of what I already knew and have been saying for some time. So,
yeah.
The title of this broadcast is "Let's Get Cracking with Enforcement of the Law." And you got to know, the supreme law of the land is the American Constitution, 1791. Many say this, but do you really comprehend that? Do you know what that means? Do you really? It does not matter what is said in relation to what type of so-called, quote, court, end quote, you are in, or who you are standing in front of per se. What matters is, what does the American Constitution of 1791 say, and why? Do you know how and why that is your protection? Do you know why it is your obligation to enforce it? Do you know? Do you really know? Or are you busy playing ego mental games with yourself? Right? And I have been going through, like I said, I've been going through this issue, this civil issue, and, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this, and I had to go and, make an appearance, special appearance, and learn some more about this process. And what this specific meeting today was all about. I found out that this meeting that I went to, I could have stayed home. Because it really doesn't matter. I mean, I learned such a huge lesson today. And before I got up, about 9 o'clock this morning, and I was going through, all of my back and forth communication, and I was carving out a lot of the case law, and I was reading it, and I added some more, and I went somewhere, and I was reading something else, and I mean, I was just really just trying to, firm up my position. And in firming up my position, some stuff got into my head and planted where seeds had already been planted, and fertilized them even more. So, as I said, you got to submit to the will of Allah. I had no idea what today was about, but because I had submitted, I felt at peace. I really didn't care what the outcome was going to be, even though I'm paying for it. I didn't care, because I already know what I am supposed to do, regardless of what decision is made. I realized that the decision I'm waiting for is irrelevant. Why is it irrelevant? Because the American Constitution was written to protect all people. It's the supreme law of the land. Hear me when I say that. Because you got Moors running around talking about, I'm looking for the case law for the Moors. There is no such thing, because the law is for everybody. This right to travel is for everybody. This ain't just for the Moors, just because you're Aboriginal or Indigenous and this is your vast estate and, and you have a nationality and a title, even about that. Really? It's about what are you doing to enforce the supreme law of the land. All right?
Yes.
It doesn't matter where you're going, because we get so caught up on, what kind of court are you in? It doesn't matter. What does matter is this. For example, this issue that I'm having started in a hearing venue. They call it a court, but you got to do the research so that you know. You ain't in a court. The building is called a court building. It's a court building. But you are not in a lawfully sanctioned court. How do you know? The lawfully sanctioned court does not do arraignment. If you're in a state, a federal, or Supreme Court, even though we know they're not lawfully sanctioned either, and I'm going to tell you why in a minute. They're not lawfully sanctioned either, but they don't do no arraignment. If you are in anything alleging to be a court and an arraignment is going on, you are in a municipal corporation that is not calling itself a municipal corporation and may be calling itself a Supreme Court or a Superior Court building. I don't care what they call themselves. If arraignment is going on up in there, you are in a municipal corporation meeting room, hearing venue, right? That's what you in. Now, we say I would never suggest anybody going to the state court because you're never going to get hurt. You're supposed to get hurt because it's a waste of time and energy and effort. But if your spirit tells you to go that route, then maybe there's a lesson for you there. Now, you're dealing with these. You go into a state or a federal or a Supreme Court. Now, we know that they don't have the delegation of authority. We know it. However, they presume to sit in a seat where they must enforce the Constitution. And our obligation that we, as declared, proclaimed Moors, are obligated to do is to enforce that Constitution. It doesn't even matter what they do or do not do. If they're sitting in that seat, your job is to make sure that the Constitution is being enforced. That's your obligation. Don't run from it. Step up to it and make them adhere to the Constitution. How do you do that? Your writs got to be on point. They got to be constitutionally sound. They got to speak of violations of your liberty, not how you feel. It's the law that's on trial here, not your feelings, not your emotions. All right? It is the law. So everything has to be based on law. And you know what? You are studying the American Constitution and you know why it was documented, written, put down in written form. Then you ought to know that that document was written to protect you from these municipal corporation employees because they're here on American soil. They came here to engage in commerce. Today they have no product or service. What are they doing? Oh, I hear the cackles of, well, they're kidnapping and generating revenue through the people. Well, yes, they are. So what does that mean your obligation is? What does it mean when employees of a municipal corporation violate the liberties of the people for an extortion of income? That's human trafficking. That's what it is. That's human trafficking. So you hold these people to the seats that they sit in, but hold on to your seat because I got a revelation that was really, really huge. One of the case laws, and I hope I can find it, one of the case laws that I was reviewing, and I think it all the time, is, let me see if I can find it real quick. It's a case law, and I talk about it all the time. It speaks of, here it is. Yes. Let me just read it word for word, because every time I read it, it gives me a new revelation, and I got one today. The case law reads, let me see. Because this is one of my, I put together a little list for myself of points of interest that I definitely wanted to make note of. And I thought, here it is. I love this. This is like nectar from the gods if you understand what it means. But you can't understand what it means if you ain't read the Constitution and have embodied it. This case law is Thompson versus Smith. And it reads, when acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendments to the present day, the judge of the municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. Courts in administering or enforcing statutes do not act judicially but merely ministerially. I'm going to read that again, but I want to go on to the second part. A judge ceases to sit as a judicial officer because the governing principle of administrative law provides that courts are prohibited from substituting their evidence, testimony, records, arguments, and rationale for that of the agency. Additionally, courts are prohibited from substituting their judgment for that of the agency. Courts in administrative issues are prohibited from even listening to or hearing arguments, presentations, or rationale. Ministerial officers, this is my favorite, are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullity. I want to read that again because there's a key point in here that I know a lot of people miss. I did too. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. From the legislature. From the legislature. All right, so now let me go back to the first case law. When acting to enforce a statute and its subsequent amendment to the present day, the judge of the municipal court is acting as an administrative officer and not in a judicial capacity. It goes on to say, courts in administering or enforcing statutes do not act judicially. Courts in administering or enforcing statutes do not act judicially. Let me read it again. Courts in administering or enforcing statutes do not act judicially. But merely ministerially. But ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power. That's Burns versus Stubb. All right? What does that mean? Now, look at this. Because I got a huge revelation today. We go into these hearing rooms where you got employees of a municipal corporation who are blatantly violating the liberties of the people as they travel on the land. They stalk them, force them off the road, and on the side of the road, they make a demand of income by way of bills of attainder, right? And they can get away with it. You know why? Not because of the law, but because so many people just pay them, just like the extortioners that they are. That's why. But check this out. Now, when you go and you have a little chit-chat in their meeting room, we send all these brilliant documents to a ministerial hearing officer. So now we're talking, bring it into a higher court, put in a civil complaint. But check it out. In the state, federal, and Supreme Court, they only talk about statutes also. What does that mean? What does it mean when they, according to such and such statutes, you need to do this, that, and the other, right? What does that mean? Well, according to this case law, it means that they are a ministerial officer. Are we surprised? No, we're asleep and blind, because right on the World Wide Web, you can go up there and look at their title, and it says administrative judge. So if they're administrative, they don't have any judicial authority. Now, why should that surprise us? Why aren't we really hammering these violators of the liberties of the constitutionally treaty-secured liberties of the people? Why aren't we hammering them? Why aren't we hammering them, and what does this all mean? Well, let me give you another piece of information. The federal and the Supreme Court and the state court, they're all dealing in statutes. Why is that? Well, let's look at it. There's been no law written since 1861. Everybody said there's no law written. You know, Congress adjourned in 1861. That's right. Congress did. That means there's been no law written since 1861. And how can you substantiate that? Because statute is all that is being written. And if statutes are being written, that can only fall under the administrative arm, and the administrative arm of the government on this land is the executive body. That would be the President of the United States of America. Nothing has been happening under the Congress, even though there you have these group of people operating as the Congress. Those are simply modern Europeans who have been sent to represent the Union states, but components necessary for a Congress on this land to literally sit and write any new law, which is not necessary, is missing, because we stepped out of Congress in 1861 and we have not returned. So there's been no law written since 1861, and everything that has been written is called what? A statute. And according to this case law, if a statute is being administered or enforced, that means you're administrative. And if you're administrative, baby, you can only be the executive branch, which is why you do not have judicial authority. Islam?
Islam, and can I add something to that? Because some people's minds are thinking right now, well, if we stepped out and sent a deer, right, and no laws are being made, what's the law? The law of the land is the Constitution. So this is what makes it so wonderful. There is a case law that says the Constitution is a written document. As such, it cannot be altered. And it damn sure can't be altered by foreigners. So, and then there's another one that goes with that says we must interpret the Constitution for what it meant when it was adopted. So right there, those two right there tells you that even though we stepped out in Congress and they bankrupt themselves and all that stuff like that, that's them, not you. That does not mean that there is no law on this land. It is. But the problem is that the bays and the ills are supposed to be enforcing it. Why? So that you're not, as you said a minute ago, molested. By who? Other citizens. Like Now, what you're saying, though, and the prophet said that. That's why the prophet said it. He said, look, if you don't enforce this Constitution, you need to enforce it so that you're not molested by the other citizens. Now, he left it up to you to find out who the other citizens were, because they're not you. You're the national. You're the Aboriginal Indigenous. So the thing is that people, they go by, like you said, their emotions, their feelings. They got hurt. A lot of times you don't want to take the intimidation that they give you when you walk in there, unless and until you become unafraid. And the only way that you can be unafraid is to, in fact, walk in there and enforce the law, period. You can't walk in there talking their language. You got to walk in there talking the language of the land. And that's where 99.9% of the people fail, because, as you said, they're trying to support and they say it all the time. Well, they just made a law. They didn't make jack. They can't make a law. The President of the United States of America can only enforce law. Now, I got to say this. They can only enforce law. They cannot make law. So if there's no law being made because Congress is in Senate there, which is right in the Constitution, it tells you how a bill becomes a law. And then it goes through, even if the so-called president that exists of the United States of America or of the United States, which is not there, even if they disagree, they can still override it with 2/3 this and of the House of Representatives, etc., like that, right? But then it also says in there, right in the Constitution, Article 1, right there, it says unless Congress is adjourned. So now when you hear that Congress was adjourned, Congress has been adjourned. So even though they may say they agree because they're just fiending anyway, like you said, they're showing up with the Union States for representation of the Union States, but they ain't finding nothing there. We ain't giving them jack. We're not there for them. We're not there as we were in the Constitution of 1774, Articles of Association, which is on the site on the Forgotten Scroll pages, where they first came to Congress in Philadelphia, or at Philadelphia, on September the 4th, I believe is the date, 1774, when they came saying, please help us to be free from the British slaves. All right, they found us there then, but they have not found us there. So they're going there now, calling themselves the Congress, showing up, but where nobody is there. So they'll say, oh, well, we passed the law in Congress. They ain't passed jack. And you as a bay, it's not good at all that we don't know that. So when they say to pass the law, you need to know that nope, the only law that exists is the law of the land. It is as it is. It stands as it stands, and that is that, and that is all. So when, like I said, so when they say they're going to they're going by the Constitution, well, guess what? They're not talking about the Constitution that you go by and that they are obligated to go by. They're talking about something else that has nothing to do with you. So what we find is our language is wrong. Really, you said it. Our language is wrong when we go in. It's not constitutionally based. It's based in feelings. It's also based in I'm going to go find out what they're doing and I'm going to get them toe for toe. No, you're not. That's not how it goes down. And the other thing, Annie, those case laws that you have there, even though we said earlier how these case laws are and how, we share this information, a lot of the information that's shared on the site is actually excerpts from actual appearances in these meeting rooms that were or are successful, or whatever you want to call it. We actually did give it. We gave it. But the thing is that unless you are in the frame of mind of competence of the law, you will not see that it was just given. And that's because we have not studied enough of the law of the land. The law of the land is waiting there for the Moors to enforce as a bay and ill. That is our duty. And then I want to say the other thing. You said it already, but let's reiterate it. The reason for the Constitution was so that you were not molested by other citizens and corporations. The thing is, the case law that you read, if you have it in front of you, it took me a minute to understand some of those that refer to these administrative courts. But those case laws are based in the Constitution, the law of the land. And even though they're for administrators, because they're really spanking them and bringing them back to the Constitution. They really are. That's what they're doing. And now there's 5 main ones, and you read two of them that we already have there, and plus we have used ourselves. I know myself and others have used those. Those are wonderful. The one about a court cannot, if you read it again, it's tricky. The one about he cannot substitute his rationale for that of an agency. Well, when you read that one, what they're saying to you, you know the DMV is an agency, right? So therefore, if that was a real judge in a real court, they're not allowed to even listen to any rationale regarding an agency. Then that same law says, it says a court can't do it, and then it seems to repeat the same thing. But you didn't read it. It says the court can't do it, and then it says a judge can't do it. If you would read that again, because that's the one.
A judge ceases to sit as a judicial officer because the governing principle of administrative law provides that courts are prohibited from substituting their evidence, testimony, records, arguments, and rationale for that of the agency. Additionally, courts are prohibited from substituting their judgment for that of the agency. Courts
right here
in administrative issues are prohibited from even listening to or hearing arguments, presentations, or rationales. Now, let me say, see, a lot of people probably missed that because, like you, I didn't get that for a while. I didn't. It went right over my head. Flew right over my head until I did a little bit more studying, and then Rod Class, they gave him the credit for all the work the Moor down there, the North Carolina Corporation was doing. He was the one that got North Carolina to admit that the police, the municipal corporation, okay, because the police is not a standalone agency. They are the corporate security for the municipal corporation. They said that the municipal corporation is not an agency for the state, yet every municipal corporation presumes to be speaking on behalf of the state. You can't do that. They're not even supposed to be listening to this issue of a, quote, citation. Lawfully, if you read up in your prospective areas, you will find that this issuing of citations are supposed to only be issued to subjects of the municipal corporation. Well, what would that be? Well, if you read everything, you're going to find that the subjects are anyone who is engaging in commercial activity. That's it. They can only speak to issues of commerce. That's it. Now, and there's one last key I want to drop because this is a doozy. The reason that you have these people who are sitting around administrating, they're not the judge. The judge is supposed to be the people. You are supposed to be the judge of your affairs, your life, your issues that are relevant to you. You are supposed to be the judge as it relates to your ability to travel on the land and do anything you literally want to, as long as you do not infringe on the rights and liberties of anyone else. And that is why they are administrative judges, one of the main reasons, and they will never be anything more than administrative judges as long as Congress is adjourned. And you got to know that. Now, let me just say this, because I know there's some people that's going to take this and run in a wrong direction, very convoluted. That does not mean, hear me well when I say this, that does not mean that you are now supposed to send in any writ talking about you are Judge Bay or Judge Ilbay. That's not what that means.
Right.
That's why you got to know the law. Our people have this mental conditioning where they're always trying to give themselves titles, the only title, on
Is
this
there
American
ill
that matters. There's an ill or a they. That's it.
Yes.
Nothing else. So
You
get
know,
up out of that, Egyptology, want to be Egyptians. You're not. Get up out of that, whatever else. I'm, Israelite. You're not. Get up out of that, whatever. You're none of those things. You are a lineal descendant of Moroccans who on American soil.
Wow. I gotta add one more thing to that. No, you're right. Reiterate. We are the lineal descendants of the mothers and fathers of civilization and civilization principles. And those principles are not just for Moors, Aboriginal, and Indigenous, but they're really for everyone so that we can all live in peace, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And that's why the prophet said the only way is for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice to reign through, to be taught to all the nations and reign through all of the nations. And that is a fact, all right? Because without that, nobody is free. Now, or nobody is going to find peace or freedom. Truth, peace, or freedom, period. And that starts with love. But I do want to add one other thing, for those who are listening and may be saying, where are those case laws? I'm going to tell you something. Those case laws have been on this site since this site was opened. This site was opened in 2008. And when it opened, we already had the books on there and all that. That's, we already had the product there. But we also were given information. It is on the driver's license page. It's Supreme Court case laws or something. It used to say vehicle traffic and judges. But when you open it up, it says vehicle/traffic. There are 5 case laws that are administrative. 3 of them Annie just read. I just want to give an example of something in terms of reading. Remember you said it took a minute to get that? Because it took me a minute too. When it said judges cease to sit as judicial office because of the principle of administrative law, that courts are prohibited from substituting their whatever, and if they're telling you the judge and the courts cannot substitute, can't even listen to testimony, rationale, etc., or evidence from an agency, which is what all the states, local DMVs, they're agencies, so they're not even supposed to be listening. And I remember using that in the early days. Ms., you were with me when they bring you in there and they say, they want to make a deal with you first, so you just pay them. And I'm like, well, who's making these decisions? And they're like, it's from the DMV. And then I read off the top of my head because I remembered it. I said, well, no, they said the judge. And I said, well, the judge ceases to sit as a judicial officer. And I ran it off. And they said, well, it's the DMV. And then I went straight into that here's the one I want to read to you. Agency or party sitting for the agency, which would be the magistrate of a municipal court, has no authority to enforce. So I kind of read that off to them, and then they say, well, go have a seat, because it's on now. It's bringing the law there. It doesn't matter. So now look, that's Schomeg versus Kaiser. Look at what it says. They have no authority to enforce as to any licensee unless he is acting for compensation, period. First line. What does that mean to you? It means that unless you are a driver being paid to drive, nothing can be enforced against you unless that is the case. And then it says it's highly penal. Now, the first one I have on this list, it says any action by the Department of Motor Vehicles, whether it is directly or through a court that's sitting administratively as the what? Hearing officer, not judge. Says hearing officer must be clearly defined in the statute before it has what? Subject matter jurisdiction. Without such jurisdiction of the licensee all of the acts of the agency by its employees, its agents, its hearing officers are what? Null and void. What are they saying? They're saying that first you have to clearly be defined in the statute that it is meant for you as a natural being. It's not. It's meant for those who are driving. That's what it says. And then I'm going to skip through because this last one was a little twister. But all of these are based, listen clearly, all of these are based in the constitutional law and apply towards the administration, bringing them back to the Constitution. This last one is actually saying what you already know, that there is no penalty unless there has been an injury, right? Everybody knows that upon this constitutional form of government, there can be no penalties given to you unless there is an injured party. So even into these administrative courts, it says the elementary doctrine. Now this is Board of Trade versus Olson. The elementary doctrine that the constitutionality of a legislative act is open to attack only by persons whose rights are affected thereby applies to statutes relating to administrative agencies, the validity of which may not be called into question in the absence of a showing of substantial harm, be it actual or impending, to a legally protected interest directly resulting from the enforcement of the statute. Do you know what they're saying? They're saying even under administrative, unless there's somebody injured, there can be no penalties applied to you. So they're bringing these administrative courts who have no judicial authority, can't talk about you're a criminal or none of that crap. They're bringing them right back to what? The Constitution. Let me say this. The case law, because there's people that are such naysayers, because they're lazy and don't want to really study, and because they don't have the spirit of law within them on their dial plate. They're such naysayers, right? All right, so all of the case law are subsequent to the law. The case laws come from what we're going to call res judicata. Some people try to erase res judicata. You got to know the difference between res judicata and a case law. Case laws are made because of res judicata. Don't mix them up now. Case laws are made because of res judicata. What is res judicata? Look it up. It means that which already is. It doesn't even have to really be written because it already is. So now you might be thinking, all you who get trust and think you're going to get a trust, res seems familiar to you, right? Because res is the contents of whatever trust you may put together, right? So res judicata, what do you think that is? That means your rights. The substance of the Constitution is based on preserving your rights. Res judicata, that which already is. Case laws come from someone violating that. So then case laws are made. We talked a couple of weeks ago how these people who you now must know are not law. They can't make law. They're now making what they call case laws, which is really their opinion because they're not case laws, based on the Moors that are going in there with the ill and the bay and have not studied jack. Now let me go here. Some people think that that's the fault of who they nationalize with or who they're associating with, and somebody should be giving them all that information because, well, it's true that if you are given information and you don't take the time to study it and apply it to your life, that's on you. It doesn't change the facts. That's right. We don't have a lot of time for the playing around. You've got to be with it. So we do understand that you go from kindergarten, which is the womb. That's the first schoolroom, and then you go to first, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and then you get a degree, and you pass that. Well, since you already know there is no public school open that's going to teach you this, then you need to take your time and study it. But what have we done, RV Bay Publications? We've given the information that we've already dug up. I have to add this because I mentioned it earlier. Some people think well, we're not going to nationalize, and they tell you, and you believe and listen to it. We're not going to nationalize with RV Bay Publications because when something happens, they're not there. Excuse you. Number one, we don't nationalize anybody. We do not nationalize you. You nationalize yourself because there's really no such thing as that. It's a frame of mind. All right? We offer guidance and a unified manner to notify with lawful notice the necessary places which we consider as principals. And notice to the principal is what? Notice to the agent. You heard that before, but did you know what it really means? So what that means is if we tell you, okay, send this to the district court and say the 7 protocols, and you don't know, and it says on the paper, D.C., District of Columbia, and you go send it to a district court in North Carolina, then you just failed because they're not going to accept that because they want to file something that's in case they're not a real court. All right? So these are the things that are we're not paying attention to, although the information is being given. Now, the other thing is, think about it. We and other people are doing whatever they're doing. They are doing work. They're putting it out there. I know we are putting it out there on our rebate program, putting it out there, right? We're supposed to stop what we're doing to go fly across the land because somebody got in trouble yesterday, and they need us to help them because they think that they're a member of RV Bay Publications. RV Bay Publications. No, seriously, I had this conversation today, and I told the brother, I said, you know what? I'm glad we had this conversation because we're going to put that on the table. This is what you're being told. Don't nationalize with RV Bay because they won't. When you call them, they won't come to your aid. You need to come to your own aid, and I'm not saying that to be mean or uncaring. That's not what I'm saying. We are already aiding. We're doing everything we can. The thing is, we're not a club. There's the club mentality and the membership in the club mentality that was already ended. The prophet himself closed down all adept chambers before he left. So you're in the temple trying to make it to the adept chamber that doesn't exist. If you read the letter that says so, that the infiltration had occurred, you'd understand that. So now, again, I'm not saying it to be mean, but what I will say is that if you are alone, the prophet already told you, then be the only one. If you're the only one, be the only one. If you are living where your mate, for instance, and this is just an example, your mate that you yoke with is unevenly yoked and you get into some situation where you think you need assistance from somebody, all right, and all I can say to you is that if that's the case and the people around you, your spiritual friends, are not with you, the person that you're mated with, you think you're in trouble with the so-called authorities because they're not authorities, but you think you got in trouble, you're going to get in worse trouble if your mate is not down with the program. You're going to be in worse trouble. They'll tie you up worse than that. So I'm saying it to say it is your obligation to enforce the Constitution, and it is your obligation to be around others who do the same. Now, I'm not telling you what to decide in your life. I know that we don't always have our quote-unquote blood close womb family that's always down with it. We are just telling you, if you don't, you may get caught up. So that's who needs to assist with you on an immediate basis instead of somebody coming from someplace and flying to another place because we don't know what you did. And I don't know. I never wanted to bring this up, but, well, we don't know what you did. What? We don't know that you went what? And what? I
just want to interject something here, and then I'm going to yield the floor because I know Ms. is probably chopping at the bit.
You already know I'm about to go smooth in as soon as I get the floor.
But you know what? I just want to make an analysis or a comparison here. You know, you mentioned, and this isn't the first time we heard this, there are Moors out there who, you know, they say, oh well, don't, like you said, don't go and so-called nationalize with RV Bay Publications. You're not nationalizing with RV Bay Publications. What you're doing is you're taking the information you're supposed to be reading and studying it, analyzing it, so that you know that you are, like the prophet said. He said, declare. He said, if you don't do nothing else, declare your nationality. Now, the prophet didn't speak from a low vibration. He spoke from a high vibration. So what was he trying to say when he said, declare your nationality? Did anybody do the etymology of declare? Because declare means you better be clear just what your nationality is. You better be clear. That's what declare means, to be clear. Are you clear? If you talk about, don't go nationalize or RV Bay Publications, you ain't clear.
No.
You ain't clear. Right? And the other thing is, anybody who is looking for RV Bay or some grand chief or God forbid, prime minister to come and do what you are supposed to be able to do for yourself is demonstrating that they're still under the mental enslavement that the prophet came to take us out from under. Because if you went to school, let's keep it simple, elementary. When you was in elementary school, when they taught you how to do simple math. Now, if you didn't learn the lesson and you went into the grocery store today and they robbed you, did you go to your math teacher in elementary or high school and say, yo, I need you to write up a writ on this because I didn't know how to add correctly and I got robbed? You didn't do that. You learned and you took care of your own affairs. You didn't depend on these modern Europeans to come and save you, but you have this obligation that you're falsely imposing on your family member because you really don't want to take. I understand it. Trustably, I understand. It's a mental conditioning that we all have to deal with every single day. Every single day. Because I knew I had this appearance that I was doing today. I didn't want to do it. I was sitting there with this mental thing going on that was, why can't somebody else do this? I don't want to do this anymore. I had to go through it, put it to the side, get dressed, and go take care of my affairs. Because that's what the prophet left for us to do. He said, in conjunction with, if you don't do nothing, be clear about your nationality, so that you can take your place amongst your affairs, so that you can handle it. Because let me tell you, I've dealt with a lot of people regarding this Moorish information and outside of this Moorish information, because I've been in a lot of different areas, and nobody tells you everything. Nobody. And they shouldn't have to, because that's why you're supposed to take your affairs in hand and be the judge of your own affairs. That's what this is all about. This is about getting you up to speed, up to smell. What did we say? Let's get cracking with the enforcement of the law. Stop having a pity party. And recognize that, you got some fear. Yes, you have to have some fear because you ain't never did this before. But you're going to have to study up, swallow your fear, and do what has to be done so that your liberties are secured. And with that, I'm going to end with this case law. I read it in the class on a Wednesday, but I was thinking about it today, and I just happened to find it. It reads, this is Cruden versus Neal. That's Cruden versus Neale. and it reads, there every man is independent, all laws except those prescribed by nature. He is not bound by any institutions formed by his fellow men without his consent.
Wow.
That's the whole basis of the American Constitution. Your liberties are not supposed to be violated by employees of a corporation who are your fellow men hiding behind corporate structures, talking about what the state or the municipal corporation is bringing charges. You, as a proclaimed Moor, which means that you know law, because you can't be a declared proclaimed Moor without having some knowledge of law, trust, and belief. And even those modern Europeans or other citizens, hello, we all are fellow men and women. So nobody has power over each other. We are all in the same boat. Dare you presume to tell me what I can and cannot do, and you are simply my fellow man. I didn't give you any consent to dictate to me what I can and cannot do. I don't care what you pull up. That's unnatural. Is mine?
No, but it's not. I want to add this one last thing, and then this, because one of the things I want to say, I think leads right into what you may, to part of what you have to say. But that's called nature's law. And the prophet, gave you some hint on that when he said that nobody can change your descent nature, and really for you to stand in that. But I want to say this: you said that the prophet said that if you don't do anything else to declare, he also told those who were members of the MHHS-Eyes that but with us, all members must proclaim. Now, there's a distinction made where declaring can also be written, but proclaiming is absolutely written and published. So you've got some MHHS-Eyes or whatever that are publishing or whatever proclaiming. They're really not proclaiming. It's all staying within because it should be on the public record. But they might put it on the public. They might put it in the public by proclaiming it. But the problem with that is they're proclaiming that they're United States of America citizens. That's what the problem with that is, and we've said it over and over again. National domicile is not subdivided by anything. Quasi-national domiciles are what all the states are. By definition, it says those states, national. And then municipal domiciles or the township, cities, or whatever. As a national, you are of a national domicile. And that means that determines your civil liberties and how far they will be or can be violated by your own admission by admitting that you are a party to or a citizen/member of a quasi-national. Then, hey, it's quasi-national. It's non-national. So you can't say I'm a more American national and then be a member/citizen of a quasi-national domicile. Can't happen. Or of a municipal domicile. So that's part of having the right words, which is what jurisdiction is. So that's what they're doing. They're proclaiming stuff and that is incorrect. And the modern Europeans and these other corporations, they're like, yeah, come on with it. For an example, tribal. I was talking with someone today, and they said that if you go in and say that you're a tribal Native American. Now, first of all, we have to take back Native American. That's us. However, there's a Native American, quote, Indian, tribal Indian. We have warned you and warned you and warned you and warned you. Gave you the executive order that was written to substantiate, but not pursuant to, but to substantiate the fact that a Native American and a federally recognized Indian, tribal Indian, are two separate things. So what have they done? They were talking about where they go in for taxes or whatever that you are non-obligated from. I told this one store that they could put TNO, tax non-obligated, instead of TIN and all that. What they do is, what they've done is they're now saying that if you say you're a tribal Indian or tribal anything, they say, oh, well, you're taxable. They didn't do that before, or they didn't have that before. Now they do. Why? Because you didn't come right. They are always figuring out how to counter you when you don't come correct. When you come correct, the spirit of law is all invincible. But if you don't have it with you, you will never know that experience. So what happens is now if you say you're tribal, see, they waited for everybody to fall. You know what I'm saying? They fall for it. Yeah, come on with it. Come and think that you're going to get your sovereignty through a UCC. Come and think you're going to, and sovereignty meaning nationality and all that comes with it. Come and think you're going to get it with the birth certificate redemption. Come on with it. Come and think you're going to get it with the tribal Indian thing. No, you're not. So now on their little forms, oh, you check tribal Indian. Oh well, you're liable to taxes because that's not what it is. We have to be who we are and stand on it. And lastly, and I just use that as an example of not really thoroughly studying and or we're not saying you got to listen to us. We don't know everything, but we know what we know, and we've experienced that. And it may not be the same experience for you, but only if you don't apply it with surety, if I would say, and confidence of knowing when you can spit off of your tongue who you are and what the circumstances are, and substantiate it right there. Now, the last thing is I want everybody to please listen. There is a website that went up, and I know they say it was up before, but I saw it, and they were trying to put it up for sale, RV Bay Publication without the S. And that's a trickery of, I'm not sure who's done it, but it's probably some modern Europeans. And the reason I say that, that's trying to infiltrate, but at the same time use whatever notoriety or power or whatever RV Bay Publications with an S has had, and to infiltrate. So if you are trying to find us and you forget to put the S, you're going to go to a website that says rvbaypublication.com, and it's bull. It doesn't. You could tell that they're not even there for any real assistance, for anything at all. They're just there. They're just really there. And they'll have anything that has to do with Moor. If a person who has the last name of, like Moor vending company, Moor this, it's really wasteland. And then they have in there, see Moors who are arrested or whatever like that. It's just craziness. They're not even putting a real effort into anything. But they are there to deter and cause possible trip-ups because of the failure of details that our people are definitely guilty of. They don't comprehend reading. They don't follow detailed information. And so if you punch in on the day publication without the S, you're going to come up with this slate thing and some absolute infiltrated bullcrap. That is not us. But we got to emphasize, and here's the easy way to remember it. Ours is plural, meaning that we're including information for everyone. RV Bay Publications, not RV Bay Publication. Islam.
And just for the record, I want to go in on some things, but I just want to make it clear, and you can vouch for this now. On Mantis Views 29, like when you see the RV Bay Publication logo, Morse Heritage and History School, Eyes Wide Open, MHHS Blog Talk, like that's official. That's not no infiltration. That's what it is. So, granted, some of those things are things I've seen in my visions, in my journey, but still in all, I try my best to make sure that different aspects of nationality, birthrights, and things affecting the home, that we put out there. And I say that to say that throughout this conversation, there was a lot brought up about the House, the legislator, and things of that nature. And I wanted to go into this particular revelation that I had as it relates to government. But first and foremost, I want to say that, and indeed, people can't throw stones or rocks at what RV Big Publications is doing, specifically Dirty Moors in the Temple. You know, I'm not the one for going back and forth. I'm the one for showing and proving. So, you know, the thing is this. When somebody tells the truth and stands on the truth, you got brothers standing, you got sisters standing on law. And I mean that in its broadest aspect, but specifically acknowledging, you know, the channels that you've opened up, you know, and the information where you're letting it pour out. RV Bay Publications, Morris Nation Public Records. I don't feel that, and it's not even about my feelings, but there's nothing that the MST of A who feels as though, people in the MST of A who feel as though, you know, there's no standing there to say anything to us when we have a multitude of testaments where they're not even letting Moors in the door, let alone nationalize under them. They're not even letting them in the door. So before you even go any further than not being let in the door, you know, there's nothing really subsequent to that. So let alone nationalizing, or even if they're doing the de facto naturalizing, you can't even get to any of that because they're rejecting Moors. There's certain temples that are rejecting Moors at the door. So what I'm saying on that note is the fact that, you know, for any Moor, you know, for Moors to make the information available, not anybody that's biting, you know, copying RV Bay publications without the S, you know what I mean, and things of that nature. You know, not that type of activity, but there's nothing anybody could actually say to knock RV Bay Publications for opening up certain channels and letting the information pour out, creating a platform, multiple platforms. So I want to say that, and all due respect there. And one of the things I want to point out relative to this conversation is the concept of the house. Now, earlier this year I was saying, you know, are you in denial of your ancestry? It's coming, part 3, and that's a fact. That is true. You know, there's some other things at hand, but that is still going to happen. But there's something that hit me, which I feel as though I tried to write down but couldn't explain as it relates to law, government, and things of that nature. I can explain it, but I feel as though it needs a verbal explanation. So I just want to go over some of those concepts, because what I would like to do is, when we're talking about the house and things of that nature, we have to realize that these are different concepts of Moorish government, basically jacked and utilized amongst the Europeans in North America under the de facto concept of U.S.A. or U.S. etc. But you know, Article 1, Section 5. Every paragraph in the first 2 words is the word house. In every paragraph, you know, each house, each house, each house, in neither house. You know what I mean? So there's this concept of the house or the home that has to do with government, law and government, right? So when we say domicile, national domicile, because you got some people who say, oh, yeah, they're enforcing the Constitution, but that's not Moorish law. That's a falsehood. The origin of it, the essence of it is Moorish law. So I would like to look at the origin of these things and tell me if I'm mistaken, because you know that it's a maxim, it's a lawful fact that as society begins with family, so does authority or government, right? Now, we know that we are distinguished in government and law and government and international law from the Pilgrims or the Europeans or the U.S. or the U.S.A., etc. However, there's a universal concept, you know, with this house, and this is not to get off of American law, because one of the things in my, you can vouch for this, June 25th, yeah, you there? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I heard somebody say something, but all right, yes, I would like to finish. If if you recall, June, I think it was either June 23rd or June 25th, 2015, Pop passed away. Is that correct? Was it the 23rd or the 20th? No, it was the 28th. I apologize. How quickly we forget. June 28th, 2015. All right. And right after that, there was a experience that we had from going down to the funeral, being on the land, right, on our ancestral estate, even though we know it's North, South, Central America, but a portion where our ancestors directly were at. Now, I'm going somewhere with this, but I have to premise what I would like to say with this, you know, these facts, this information. So from that time, we had a certain visual. I had a certain visual experience where everything I saw was meaning something to me. From the face masks, to the statues, to the artwork, to all of these things. One of the things, the who?
Zion Crossroads.
Zion Crossroads. Right. This is a revelation that's going to stick for life, because I found myself growing so much from this. Certain things I couldn't make sense of overnight. This was a deeper story, so to keep it all the way 1,000 with the literature aspect, not for nothing, but I had to meditate on this one, and there's been some revelations that have came to me from that experience. So while we were there, right, there was all types of Moorish artifacts in the lobby, you know, Aboriginal, indigenous types of artwork and manifestations and things like that. But one of the most simplest things that were on the walls and that made me think about it a little deeper was those big spoons. You remember those big spoons that were on the wall? All right.
Yes.
So those big spoons were on the wall, but the dimension, the aspects, the energy, the divine inspiration, I can't even explain it any other type of way, that was being received at that moment when I realized my ancestors are in the building. Out of all of the facial, you know, images that were blatantly Moors at that particular time, all of the artwork on the wall, something as simple as the spoons kept speaking to me. Like it was jumping out to me. It meant something deeper, right? Like that's how I felt. I felt like, nah, this is not just seeing spoons on the wall. This is something like deeper than that. So I say that to say that, correlating back to law, government, family, and the house, right?
Yep.
I found, and you know, I found that government is based off of home, off of the home, off of the house, off of the ancestral estate, right? And specifically the kitchen, though. And now I like to explain what I mean as far as the house and how government is based off the kitchen. This is not for nothing, because this is inspiration from that experience when I was feeling like, yo, it's something more to these spoons than just these being spoons. This is a message. I can't, you know what I mean? So I trust that this divine and national aspect or vision or view can be respected for what it is. And if anybody feels as though I'm wrong, please say so. But I don't know if I can accept it. This is just how I perceive through my experience and how this relates to government, right? So the spoons on the wall, the house, and the kitchen. So let me first preface a premise, you know, what I would like to explain as far as what we were talking about, administrative, executive, judicial, and Article 1, Section 5 of the American Constitution, how this correlates directly to your home. This is direct. Your home should be an example. Your ancestral estate should be an example. And we can all agree to the fact that the word domicile means home. or house. That's what the word means. All right. So house, right? Page 872 of the Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, right? Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll leave some of that or most of that to your studies. But at the very bottom on page 872, it goes into a legislative assembly because there's like three other definitions. But this is one I wanted to bring emphasis to. Or let me say this, the one right above it. It says house is not synonymous with dwelling house, while the former is used in a broader, the former being house opposed to dwelling house, and more comprehensive sense than the later, which is dwelling house. So you have house and dwelling house, right? It has a narrower and more restricted meaning than the word building, right? So we know we have to build in order to get a house. Now check this out. This is all inspiration from being at Zion Crossroads when my grandfather passed. All of this correlates, right? So, you know what I mean? Because of those spoons on the wall, though. You know what I mean? I summons this. So, so you got your house. Now, we know that a lot of people say, oh, the government is Masons, things like that. But we know that in order for any structure to be erected, you have to be dealing actual masonry, not, accepted. I'm talking about Chapter 5 tools that we use in the workshop of the mind, building. You know what I mean? Certain tools you can use to build. All right? So just to set the foundation. All right? So we know that in the Constitution they speak of the house. And what I wanted to bring to light again is the fact that when you look at the house, the kitchen is the structure of government in certain aspects. Because, again, you got the House of Lords, you got the House of Representatives, you know what I mean? You got the White House, or akin to Moroccan language, Casablanca, right? So you see a lot of things that are executive dealing with the house or the home, right? Or the domicile, however you like to look at it. But all of this goes back to home base or nationality, scent, things of that nature. You know what I mean? All of this correlates. So I did a brief preview before, but there was a lot of revelation subsequent that, have to be molded. So again, the kitchen, right? So I wanted to start with the fact that the definition of chef, because remind you, we're talking house and how the government is based off the kitchen. So definition of chef. Oh, hold on. But before I do that, remind you, last week on the principles of nationality in action, I was talking about the chancellor and the chandler, which chandler correlates with chandeliers. Yeah. That's also an aspect of the house. Now, hold on, right? Because in certain houses, you have chandeliers. All right, so check the theory. Check the correlation. All right, so kitchen. Definition of chef, right? A head or chief. Now, we know that chief, right, because the word chef is a derivative of chief. So you're talking about the house. You got chief executive officers, right? What is Obama? The chief executive officer? No, the commander-in-chief, excuse me. Commander-in-chief, right? So we see the word chief still correlating with chef being utilized in government. This is a fact, right? And as society begins with family or the home, so does authority of government. So then again, you have the definition of chef d'oeuvre, which is French, and it means a masterpiece, as in art, literature, etc., right? So, what do they say they creating? State-of-the-art theaters and, state-of-the-art federal buildings. Just today it was in the paper. They spent $37 million on one county prison, but that's just one county, so we got bigger problems at hand, right? So, mind you, now I'm not going to go into all of this because you're going to have to read this book to really get the entire essence ancestors that correlated with chefing it up, literally in the kitchen. You know what I mean? Or chiefing it up, literally in the kitchen, right? So I figure, like, you know, correlating with this house and government being the kitchen, I recall that every single kitchen usually has cabinets, right?
Ah, so, what's in the cabinet?
Feel what I'm saying? Right? So they have cabinets. President Obama got his cabinet, all of these things, right? So just for the record, so we're clear, right? Definition of cabinet in law, the advisory board or council of a king or chief executive, right? And that's basically what Obama is, commander in chief, right? As far as judicial things that are judicially solidified, because there's three branches, right? Judicial, legislative, and executive. So that's the trinity in law, or the way it was set up. Now, mind you, this still is all relative to the House, because so-called presidents of the United States operate in what? The White House, Casablanca, and with Moors. So it says, the select or secret council of a prince or executive government, so-called, this is the definition of cabinet, so-called from the apartment in which it was originally held. And in reference to source of law is Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, revised 4th edition, page 254. So mind you, every kitchen has cabinets. Now, in the 1936 Unabridged Dictionary, under the definition of cabinet, they have a sub-definition of kitchen cabinet. This is what it says specifically, kitchen cabinet. And what it says in the unabridged definition of kitchen cabinet is an epithet apply, or another, in other words, an appellation or a name. So an epithet applied to certain friends of President Jackson who were supposed to influence his official action to a large extent. And again, the reference and source of law is Webster's Unabridged Dictionary, page 232, definition of cabinet. Now, mind you, I'm going in like this based off of those spoons on the wall and summoning understanding of what did that particularly mean. All right? So it doesn't just stop there. Now, I know for a fact we're not Negro, Black, colored, African American, or anything like that. But we know that when it came to Moors or the Aboriginals of North America, that there was a lot of sellout going on amongst our own people, right? So I'm like, damn, because I'm looking at it like, how did we fall this far? How did we get this far away from a colonial government and autonomy, right? And then I'm thinking like, damn, those brands, Negro, Black, colored, they did a number as far as personam jurisdiction goes. And some of those who actually wanted to be up under the jurisdiction of the pilgrim and satisfy or please their master, meaning they were willing to accept a master-servant relationship, but with them in the position of a servant, not the master. And when I say them, I mean Moors, certain Moors who accepted the brands Negro, Black, and colored, not in a nationalized state of mind, but I'm talking denationalized Moors, accepted the fact that they were Black and they wanted to work or help out this pilgrim. So again, mind you, the House, every paragraph of Article 1, Section 5 of the American Constitution, right? Every house has a kitchen. If not, it's not a house. So then every kitchen has cabinets. We went over kitchen cabinets. But I wanted to go over the aspect of what they call the black cabinet. The black cabinet, because these were sellout, dirty Moors in other words, in law, history, and government. So the quote-unquote black cabinet was first known as the Federal Council of Negro Affairs. Now, mind you, we're not Negro, Black, and colored, right? But this is what they called the black cabinet. an informal group of so-called African-American public policy advisors to United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was supported by First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. By mid-1955, there were 45, that's a 9, so-called African Americans working in federal executive departments and quote-unquote New Deal agencies. All right? So we all know what Roosevelt did. You know what I mean? You know what that is. But I'm looking at it as they're utilizing the aspect of the home, right? So, cabinet, kitchen cabinet, black cabinet. We know we're not Negroes, black, and colors. And mind you, this is all off those spoons off the wall. I figured, right, because I said every kitchen has cabinets, but then every cabinet has boards. They're called cupboards or boards, right?
Yeah.
So, definition of board in law, an official or representative body organized to perform a trust or to execute official or representative functions or having the management of public office or department exercising administrative or governmental functions. Commissioners of State Insurance Fund versus Dinowitz 39. And again, you can look that definition up in your Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary. So, you know, take it a step further. Every kitchen cabinet has boards, right? Chandeliers, all of these things. You see the Europeans utilizing our strategy of building as government form. Right in your kitchen, you can see this, right? Or get the aspect. So, to go on with the definition of board, it says a committee of persons organized under authority of law in order to exercise certain authorities, have oversight or control of certain matters, or discharge certain functions of a magisterial, representative, or fiduciary character. Thus, Board of Aldermen, Board of Health, Board of Directors, Board of Works, also lodging, food, going back to the kitchen. Everybody know in the kitchen there has to be food. So you see that language in, I'm willing to accept room and board, right? You're still dealing with the house. You're still dealing with the kitchen. This is multi-dimensional, real facts. So, you know what I mean? And that's not even to go into the fork and knife and things like that. You're going to have
you know what the spoon is?
Hold on.
Can I just interject the spoon? The spoon?
Yeah.
It just came to my mind here. The spoon you usually use to stir your food. Now, Moor's, I'll say Moor's culture is that when you're stirring your food, you're supposed to stir it towards your heart, which is love, as opposed to away from your heart. And a lot of sisters might be thinking right now, wait a minute, how do I do that? Most of us stir away from the heart, but you're supposed to stir with the spoon towards it when you're preparing food. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, good looking. So basically, if you're right-handed, if you got if you're stirring the pot with your right hand, you want to be stirring counterclockwise, right?
Yeah. Backwards
and
to
if
the
you're stirring with your left hand, you want to stir clockwise.
Yep.
Yeah, true indeed. So we're breaking down the kitchen. Government is based off the home, specifically the kitchen. So, all right, so let me bring that back. Hold on. Okay, yeah, so a committee, because we're talking about board, right? Every kitchen has cabinets. Every cabinet has boards, right? So a committee of persons organized under authority of law in order to exercise certain authorities, have oversight or control of certain matters, or discharge certain functions of a magisterial, representative, or fiduciary character. Thus, Board of Aldermen, Board of Health, Board of Directors, Board of Works, also lodging, food, entertainment, furnished to a guest at an inn or boarding house. Now, mind you, a guest at inn or boarding house takes us back to the definition of black codes in the Henry Campbell Black's Law 4th edition, because in there it was talking about under the black codes, there were certain people who couldn't be received at certain ends. Hold on, before I continue, I would like to just read that definition for the record, so that we can keep correlating all of this, the boards. Okay, so black codes, page 214, Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary. It says a name given collectively to the body of laws, statutes, and rules enforced in various southern states prior to 1865, which regulated the institution of slavery, and particularly those forbidding their reception at public inns and on public conveyances, right? Civil rights cases, page 214, Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, right? Now, mind you, spoons on the wall. That's why we're going in like this, right? So, that's what you got. You know what I mean? So you're talking food, entertainment furnished to a guest at an inn or boarding house. The definition of board still correlating with the kitchen. Now it says when the word board is used in reference to prisoners as a basis for the sheriff's fee, board may be equivalent to necessary food. Again, still going back to the kitchen. All right, so board as a verb means to receive food for a reasonable compensation, either with or without lodging. All right? This is in your Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary. So I'll leave it on these last two notes, and then the rest will be in writing, but this deserves an explanation. Now, mind you, I'm speaking of the government being relative to the kitchen or the house. So in every kitchen, as every kitchen has boards, cabinets, every cabinet has boards, and we're dealing with food or food for thought, things like that. What does every kitchen have? A table. What does every table have? Chairs, right? So you're dealing with chairs. Now you look at the structure of what is a chairman for, right? This is all based off kitchen. You know what I'm saying? So the chairman is a name given to the presiding officer of an assembly, public meeting, convention, deliberative, or legislative body, board of directors, committee, etc. Reference to source of law, Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, revised 4th edition, page 290. All right? So the chairs, the chairman, or the head of however it is in your household, right? You still have a concept of chairs in the kitchen correlating to law and government. Now, mind you, the Europeans jacked this form of government from Moors, because there's a book called Parliamentary Procedures, which is dealing with jurisprudence that was taught to the Europeans in Europe, which they had to accept to even be able to discuss things back and forth like they do in Congress and the House, meaning that what you're seeing, or what they're calling parliamentary, right? You go back to parliamentary procedures. What is that? That's dealing with respect, the science of speaking and the science of listening. Meaning, when you see these people and they say they're having house meetings, right? Everybody gets a certain amount of time to speak, and you get a certain grace period, but you can't go outside of that time limit without respecting the rest of the members of the House, meaning you have to be able to yield the floor and, let somebody else speak. That's the cipher. And again, that's not even to get into the fact that we're talking about tables in the ancient, because we're still talking about the kitchen in the house. So every kitchen has a table. So, you're talking about science of round tables, 360 degrees, whether it be round, square, etc. It's talking about a cipher where everybody can meet and congregate with no one at the head and no one at the foot. Ancient science. That's not nothing in the 21st, 20th century. That goes back centuries, that science of the kitchen table being round, square, 360 degrees. All right? So now, we got chairmen, we got chairs in the kitchen, we got tables in the kitchen. All of these things, mind you, the big old spoons in the wall for stirring the pots. So I just want to read this, and I'm going to yield the floor on this note. The definition of table in law, a synopsis or condensed statement bringing together numerous items or details so as to be comprehended in a single view, as genealogical tables going back to family, bloodline. All right? It's based off the kitchen. Facts. That's the truth. So it's mentioned in genealogical tables in the lawful definition of table in your Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, correlating back to the concept of where did the Europeans get the concept of this governmental structure from Moors. Why? Because Moors were the lawgivers for sure. And what did they do? They used semiotic thoughts to make sure that organization was held in order, like was held in high esteem for everything that they did. So what did they do? They took the principles of the home all across the world, or civilized people with home principles. You know what I mean? And it's not even no house Negro talk. Not at all. This is a fact. You know what I mean? Because you go back to what's as cheating and things of that nature. People can't even relate because they've been kicked out their homes. You know, genealogically disinherited, labeled Negro, black, and color. So this is a conversation we have to talk about, because the home is where that's the, you got three bases, right? In baseball, first, second, third, that's a trinity. But then you got the fourth, which is home. You know what I mean? That's when you made the complete cipher, when you could bring it all home. So, you know, looking at it from that aspect, and mind you, the baseball field is based off of Moorish math, but I'm not getting into that right now. I'm just saying, semiotically, metaphorically speaking, I would trust that these thoughts, you know, will be of some enlightenment. So let me go on to finish this definition of table, correlating still with the kitchen. So it says a synopsis or condensed statement bringing together numerous items or details so as to be comprehended in a single view, as genealogical tables, exhibiting the names and relationships of all the persons composing a family, life, and annuity tables used by actuaries, interest tables, etc. And the reference and source of law, again, is Henry Campbell Black's Law, revised 4th edition, page 1622. All right, so that being said, still going back to the kitchen, we definitely can't forget the sinking, what that means in law, because you got something called unclean hands. And I don't think there's anybody who's been able to walk into their grandmother's kitchen and start touching food without washing your hands first. So these are family principles that you see solidified in law. So I'm going to end it on this note. Definition of unclean hands principle, right? Principle that one who has unclean hands is not entitled to relief and equity. Van Antwerp versus Antwerp. And again, that's in your Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary. So those were the visions that I had. Those were the revelations, the summons of understanding, you know what I mean, that I've had, stuff of trying to comprehend what those spoons on the wall mean when we were down at my grandfather's funeral. Some people can take it slight, but, you know, I just exhibited some of the semiotic revelations that I've had from trying to make sense of it all. So, you know, I say that to say that when they talk about house, you know what I mean, in government, House of Representatives, House of Lords, you know what I mean, all of these different things, you got to keep in mind this is government is based off the home, the family structure, the family inheritance. Will they tell you that? No, they're not going to tell you like that, but it's in your face if you dig deep enough. So, again, I feel elated to have had shared my revelation. I trust it corresponds with somebody, and with that right now, I just want to yield the floor in the aspect of the origin of these things. What is the origin? Because, again, people say that, the Constitution is not Moorish law. Yes, it is. The substance, you know what I mean? Because everything that manifests has substance. So meaning that it's never just the shell, it's what's going on internally. What was the internal, process that made those things manifest? Meaning that you have corn, you know what I mean? But corn usually has husks. So you got to peel the husk backs to get to the substance. Now, I'm not talking about if corn is a hybrid or anything. I'm just giving you an example. Or if you want to eat an orange, usually you got to peel the skin off so you could get the substance of it. So you can't just look at the external shell and say that's the it and that's the all. No, so everything has substance. And the substance of what you see came from Moorish law. That's a fact. Every bit of that Constitution, American Republic Constitution, for those parts that apply strictly to the Europeans and to those parts that apply to Moors and everybody. You understand? But what I'm saying is starts at home first, and that's what we need to understand. And again, we could go into deeper concepts of the home, white meaning purity, purity meaning God, and then you got your showers, bathtubs, baptisms, things like that, where you cleanse in the water. Okay, this is divine and national. So, I respectively yield the floor right now. Islam.
Islam. All right. Yes, Islam. That's kind of interesting. You got to think about all of those things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what study will do.
So in essence, and remember earlier when you said, it's kind of like we got to understand how to qualify. When he says Moorish law, the law, like people, like how do we qualify this? It's like people think, oh yeah, this is just the law for Moors. No, it's how do you explain it? The law is the law is the law, and that's one of the other things that they trip you up with. Oh, is this? Who do you think you are? You're above the law? Oh, my gosh, if you don't know how to come back with that, the law is the law. As a Moor, you are definitely supposed to know it because you are the what? The lineal descendant of the mothers and fathers of civilization and civilization principles, period. Mm-hmm. So it's not that it's Moorish law and it's not for someone else. It's the law, period. And it's steeped in divine principles. That's why it's divine and national. So, and then if you don't know that, I guess that's why whatever they're saying is the law. That's the big question. If the issue is about law or whatever, why is it that the people think that? Well, no, why is it that the people want to look at what the law of the land is, which clearly states that all of the Union States must not make anything. That was the Article, 6. It says it so clear. It says, yep, those states can make ordinance and statutes and things they call law, but as soon as they make one that violates this Constitution, it has no standing because they already know they can't make law. And if it is law, then it goes to what's, if it were, then, first of all, state wouldn't be making it. They wouldn't be making it. They can't. That's not the legislature. So what do? They create, what do? They create what they call a legislative department of the state. And because we don't know the difference, we think that that's a reality.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But if they're from the state, and see, this is what people got to get clear on. That's why
It's imperative people.
Can you talk into the mic? You're a little low.
Okay. That's why I'm saying it's imperative that people know that American Constitution, because how many of us have gone into these hearing rooms and their ministerial officer has said things like, well, in the state of whatever, you got to blah, blah, blah. And look, that's so false. And another thing to keep in mind is statute is the administration of the law, but it is not the law. You know, so they have us treating a statute like it is the law, much like they have us treating a Federal Reserve note as if it is lawful money, and it's not. It is an IOU. It's not money, just like statutes is not law. Statutes are written under administrative, executive bodies. They do not have the authority to write law. It's right in the Constitution. Therefore, if any so-called state alleges that they have a law, what they really have is the administration of the law, but they have yet to tell you what that administration, what the law is relative to this administrative process that they have enacted. For example, Title 49, that's an administrative process. I can tell you exactly what law that pertains to. It's in the Constitution, and it speaks of, it says that Congress has the power to write law regarding interstate commerce. Therefore, Title 49 is the administration of that law, but it is not the law.
Mm-hmm. Well, you speaking of Title 49, and I'm glad you brought that up real quick here, because I had someone that said that, I asked what authority, and a policy enforcer that you call policeman told the person, oh, our authority is Title 49. So when you read Title 49, it explains that it is only for those who are doing what?
That's right, commerce. It's right in the purpose. The purpose is Section 30101, and it states that the purpose of this statute to administer and protect the people from those who are engaging in commerce. It says it right there. The whole purpose of, and see, this is why you have to do the historical research. Title 49 has its inception in the 1887 Interstate Commerce Act. And that dealt with the railroads, because the railroads were violating the people's rights. And that's where the whole motor vehicle program has its inception, and it's still on the books today, in the Interstate Commerce Act. And so it can never be, it was never supposed to be imposed on the people, but the vast majority of people are in a coma. They ain't just asleep. They're in a coma. And I'm not just talking about Moors. I'm talking about modern Europeans. Everybody. They're in a coma. And this is why you have employees of various municipal corporations who are violating the people's, and it ain't just the municipal corporation. It's the municipal corporation. It's the banking corporation. It's the so-called mortgage corporation. It's the utility corporation. all of these corporations literally are violating the liberties of the people because they do not have any authority to impose. They can't impose a fee on the natural resources of the land. The natural resources of the land were here first. And it is for everybody. It's for everybody. Nobody has the right to, like, one of the things that a lot of these corporations will do is they will put a dam in place. They don't even understand why the water ran in a certain direction. They erect a dam. It totally destroys the ecosystem in many areas. And then they ration out the water to the people. But the water was here first. I mean, I'm just saying these are issues that people need to get cracking on with the enforcement of the law, that law being the American Constitution. So we got like an hour left, and I want to start taking some phone calls. If you have a question, comment, or concern, please press 1 on your telephone dial, and we're going to begin taking callers.
Can I say just one thing? And the only reason I want to just interject it before we get into is because I was just listening to, some of this political stuff. That's a whole other thing. But everybody is on the Obamacare thing, like they're going to attack it and change it. And I just wanted people to know, food for thought. One of the reasons they hate the Obamacare thing is because in it, on what page is it, Annie? 105 or 125 or 127? I don't know.
I think it's 107. It's 107.
107. What does it say? It says that if you're Islamic or Muslim, this whole program does not apply to you. I just wanted to say that so anybody out there, and I know we said this before, just so that you will understand, so they're against Moors and their culture, period. And you as a Moor, you shouldn't be complaining about the Obamacare and how you will be penalized if you don't get involved because it's not meant for you, Islam. All right.
Well, actually, people don't understand the Obamacare is not for the people. I mean, it's supposed to benefit the people. But the one that is obligated to provide it and pay for it is the employer, not the employee, much just like the filing of taxes is the obligation of the employer, not the worker. All right? Now, employer and employee are synonymous, all right, because to the worker, you are an employer. However, almost all corporations are contractors of the United States in one form or another. Therefore, the employer becomes the employee of the United States because they are contracted. So the employer and the employee is one and the same. So when you start looking at these IRS forms and who is obligated to complete them, it is not the worker. All right? It is the employer who is one and the same. Because many of them do not produce a product or a service. So now if the employer-employee is the one that is obligated to provide the insurance, now remember, many of these, like I said, these corporations, they are contractors. For example, every municipal corporation is a contractor of the state. Every state, just like in Title 49, it allows the states to participate. Therefore, every state that administers Title 49 is an employee of the United States. And they receive funding. They are the ones who are obligated to provide insurance to their workers. And that's why they're pissing mad at the Obamacare. You really think if it was on the people, the worker, to provide the health care, that they would be pissy bad? They would be like, yep, push that through. They can take care of that for them. Yep, doesn't have anything. They wouldn't be saying a word because it's not for the worker. But see, the worker thinks that they are an employee, and they're not. The corporation that you're working with, I mean, it's a little bit convoluted, but you have to you have to follow it because it's all about trickery. When they come with from a federal perspective, you're required to file income taxes. What federal what? When you go and you read it, it starts talking about employees. Oh, I'm not an employee. You got to do the etymology of the word employee, and you'll find out it means employee, which is the employer. I'm just saying, they can't compel the people to do anything, but they can compel corporations because that's what the Constitution is all about. So with that, let's take our first caller. Caller 412-969. You're live on the air. Please state your appellation at Northwest Maxim.
Islam family, this is Energy Ill out of Northwest Maxim. I enjoyed the call this evening. Hopefully you all can hear me. I had 2 cell phones running this night because I was just brought into the awareness of a Moorish National Government.land site/organization, and I was just curious what the family knew of such a thing. I was just told about it today, so I haven't really had too much time to investigate. However, I did go in on their call-in line tonight. It was pretty insightful because it was dealing with spiritual aspects, and I just really appreciate the information they were giving out. But I'm just curious, of the affiliation of course, I'm totally clear that we're Moors, period. But it was just certain things that I had seen as soon as I went to the site, like the so-called seal, Circle 7, and it had the establishment date of 1865. And that kind of was off-putting to me because I'm like, wait a minute, if the Prophet established the first temple in 1913 and the Prophet was born in 1886, I just didn't really get, and I didn't have an opportunity to actually ask the questions there. It was more or less answering the questions that they had asked of the people, and, of course, as a study, I was able to answer some things. So just open to the family, this Moorish National Government.land. Are you familiar?
I just want to ask you something. When you said the seal, the Great Seal was not established by Prophet Noble. In reality, the Great Seal has its origins in astrology, because it's a symbolic.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So that wasn't really. That's the seal of the Moorish nation, but it actually is. It comes off of the nature of it, the essence of harmonizing energies that create, that pyramid style. But aside from that, N.E., do you know what she's talking about? Moorish stadium?
No, but I looked it up real quickly, and I can already see it's some. Oh no!
What?
Always thank you, because like I said, I ain't got time to be going down the wrong way or nothing like that, because I got to study too much. I got children up under me.
What's the first thing that you see?
Let me just give you a clue. Give you a clue, okay?
We can't hear you. You need to talk. We can't hear you that well. You're low. Talking to the mic.
Hold on.
All right.
Is that better? Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Yes.
All right. So-called Moorish American Government.land. Okay, I don't know what you found, but the first thing I see is a flag flying with a sword over the five-pointed star.
Yes, sword over the woman.
The sword over the five-pointed star
is somebody chopping off mother's head.
Yeah.
Okay, that was going to be my second
good.
thing pointing out as far as off-putting.
Whenever you see a sword over the 5-pointed star, that is somebody chopping off mother's head. That can
because
never
I know our
be
flag is over
correct.
7,000 years old. So with that being said, that was the second thing that I seen just on the visual. As soon as, like you said, the site come up, these are the things that's presented first. And because I study, they were off-putting because, okay, you said that the seal is dealing with cosmology or astrology. Cool, I can get that. And the establishment date, okay, that whole thing, it did throw me off. And then, like you said, in the middle where that flag is with the sword over the star, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, that correlates to me that you're severing a situation.
Yes.
I'm not clear, so I couldn't wait for class tonight so I can ask the questions because I don't have time to give my children any garbage.
Well,
and then when they were talking about the grand, okay, when they had the principles, it's grand sheik, grand chairman, then the prophet, and I got questions. Why is not the prophet first?
Well, first of all, there wasn't such thing as those titles when he was on the thing, but you know, it's sad. It's just sad because many people, what Anna E just picked up right there, that's where you have the Masonic orders, and they have on their fads, they have the sword over the woman. It's a woman's face, and they have the sword cutting off her head, you know, like that. And so now they have it over the 5-pointed star, which really represents arm, leg, arm, head, and the mother and the child. Because in the crescent moon with the star, the moon that's the mother and child. So the child is the star. So what they're saying is they're ready to cut off generations of the mother's children. That's really what they're saying. So if somebody,
I said it's symbology, but you know what though? I mean, like once we achieve, you know, semiotic perception or semiotic clairvoyance, like mostly any question, you know, is already left in what Noble Drew Ali left, like basic fundamentals, 101s. You know what I mean? Like literally the answer is in the 101s. The reason why is because look at the flag. I just pulled it up, looking at the so-called flag that they have flying. Now, I love Moors, all active Moors, etc. But is this what Noble Drew Ali brought? Absolutely not. Is that the Moors flag? Absolutely not. The reason why? No, real facts, though. Because Noble Drew Ali, right, in the 101s, the question was asked. No, seriously. The question was asked and the answer was given. He said, what kind of flag is the Moorish?
It's a red flag with a 5-pointed star in the center of it.
In the center, though, right? In the center. Not below center, not above center, like in the center. There was no description of white on the flag. He said a red flag with a green 5-pointed star. No white quadrants or anything of that nature. Just a red flag with a green 5-pointed star in the center. So when you see things like that, the answer already is in what Noble Drew Ali left. And that's a great question you brought up. But the discussion points right back to the 101s. It's just what it is, what it is. Now, people say, well, on the administrative function books, you see that. Yeah, you see that, but you don't see it in the form of a flag. Like, it's in a circle. So it's not even...
That's a proper symbol, but it's not the flag.
It's not the flag. It's not even on the rectangle. It's not even in the rectangle fashion format. So, you know what I mean? There's a difference in what's being, you know, presented. Like, nobody presented it as the Moorish flag. It's just an emblem. But to say that's the Moorish flag, that's
of the
you know,
American,
Moorish
of the
national
American
flag.
government. That's
Moorish,
supposed to be our Moorish American national flags, and they're supposed to be representing us Moors as, department heads of the government of us Moors. And I don't really have time to go into a whole other site.
Yeah, but he specifically said a red flag with a green 5-pointed star in the center. Like, that's all you need to know that's not the Moorish national flag. Like, real fact. Because it is not, he didn't say a red flag with a green pointed star, a 5-pointed star below center or above center, or center left, center right, like in the center. And that's not where that green 5-pointed star is at. So, I mean,
you don't have to create anything. See, the problem I have is this. When are we going to understand and stand under the fact that we do not have to create anything new?
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Like, who is doing this as if we need to create something new when the information regarding national principles, and as Prophet Nubu Ali has already established, he said, I have given you enough to save an entire nation. Now just go out and save yourself. You have your flag. You have your emblem. You have the Constitution. You have your seal. You have the land. And you have the people. What is it that people are trying to establish new? Some new government, which means the governmental. It's already done. We keep running to other things, trying to establish new things. That's for those who do not know. And they're going to get caught up in that. I guarantee you.
And let me give you this, family.
Because that's not on the radar, but go ahead.
This is, it brought, you know what I'm saying, it stirred something in me because it was someone who call themselves studying under me, and I always tell people, you don't study under me, you study, and that's just the bottom line. And then all those who try to call themselves studying under me, that's when I kind of go AWOL and missing in action. You're not going to find me because that's not my job to carry you along the way. Where I get my studying on at, you're capable of doing the same, and that's the way I see it. But the individual that brought it to me, he had said some things which I had told him to correct his stance on that, because these individuals gave you the information, and you were able to get to this point wherever you found what this information is or whatever that you're more or less meshing with, okay, fine. But you do not call Taj Tariq Bey, Ananid Il, Raz Mariah Bey, Mizraim Il Bey, or Cujo Ottawa El frauds. Get out your mouth. If you ever talk about Moorish information, if you're not going to speak highly of the family that brought you to the point where you was even define such whatever that's going to be or whatever that is, because I'm going to look at it. Now, I'm not going to just cast it completely off. But like I said, just from the start, I could tell this is problematic. Anyway, but it just bothered me because I'm like, these individuals have given their life. By the time they got the information, they have not done anything other than to uplift fallen humanity. They have a complete website that is at no cost to you to go study from. This is their hard work that they've put forth, and you're not going to sit up here and smear their names because what you think, what you know. But Taj was a Mason. That ain't got nothing to do with anything. He reveals information to you not.
All sons are a Mason. It means my son.
Mason means my son. So
I understand that. Me and him had that conversation a long time ago, so I wasn't involved in that. I told him to mind his business or something like that because he's not clear.
Yeah.
Add on to, like, let's say Taj was a Mason. Like, let's say Taj was a lodge initiated Mason. Like, I've asked him, he said no. But let's say he was. Just name me 2 Masons right now who openly brought you the information like that. Just 2. You can't do just
that's
one.
What I'm saying. Exactly.
Just one. What Mason, what so-called Mason came, like, not just wrote it down, but came amongst the people and let them know about their nationality and their birthrights, Moor's birthrights.
Well, I could tell you about the last
if
one
he
who tried,
was,
and that would have been Martin Luther King, and they murked him for it. So there you go.
Yeah, but because why? He had that oath, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's the reason why he already had the oath. So what I'm saying is, because, trust me, there's people who got those degrees and never stepped in one of those buildings. And that's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody is telling you something on those degrees that you might not ever be able to be privy to, you gotta respect that. You know what I mean? Whether they, you know, I'm not talking about how perfect they were in character building. I'm speaking of the fact that, whatever it is that they found out, they came amongst you and tried to share that, and it benefited your life. You know what I mean? So how can you knock that? Like, I'm saying, like, you have certain Masons who tell you the truth, but in different forms. They'll give it to you in not even that. I can't even say in the form of the Matrix, because they jacked that from the sister. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, they did.
But you got your Wizard of Oz's and things like that. Yeah, they're subliminally telling you, but who came out and straight up told you are Moors? I mean, not that he was the first one to do it. Don't get it wrong, because there's been people who've been mentioning that over the decades, from Noble Drew Ali to now and previous to that. So what I'm saying is, like, the topic is getting corny. Like, you know what I mean? Where are these people at? They changing. Come on, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I just don't appreciate the slander that's
emblem
coming about from people who obviously aren't studied well, or still dealing with lower cell vibration or doubt, or still trying to pick apart, us because of the mental enslavement of the mind. And it just bugs me out, especially when it's someone who is supposed to be close to me. And I have no problem cutting ties with anyone. Everybody knows this.
You can't let listen.
Yeah, it don't bother me.
I'm just saying, listen for a minute. It's important that you do not let that upset your apple cart, because you have to. This is how you deal with that. The whole point is that the mission is about uplifting fallen humanity. So those people are part of the fallen humanity, and you have to keep that in your mind when things like that happen. Is that we're fallen humanity, so that's what we're doing this for. So when they do things like that, now that's them. They may come back to some other realization, or they just may get caught up in whatever it is. But that's their sojourn. You just got to keep doing what you do.
Okay, one last question. This theocracy.
Yeah.
Now, I looked it up in my dictionary, and it does speak of government. And it says it speaks of government of God. Now, I don't have my Black's Law sitting right here with me. It's downstairs, and I'm upstairs in the bedroom. So, reading that, I mean, that's another reason what sprung me to go to the site itself, because I'm clear what RV Bay Publications is. It is a site where you can gather information on learning, the information about your nationality and birthright, learn about, traveling, learning about, the prophet, learning about all great sorts of things that you need to be knowing while you're navigating through this particular paradigm, as well as a publication company, so you could go and get information as far as books and what have you from there too. Pointing out the fact that RV Bay Publication is not nationalizing anyone. They just provide, information for you to, get yourself clear, and then there's documents that's already put together. You can utilize them, or you can create your own to put people on notice, but that is a decision you must make for yourself. The site and the organizers of that site has nothing to do with what you do with your nationality. It just provides an informational source as well as product. That's all that is. So stop trying to make it seem like the Moors, who have established this wonderful gift to the nation, is some type of scam artist. Now, I'm not going to stand for that.
You got a damn shame. Hey, we got a product to sell and give away information for free, and we're scamming. Ain't that a daggone shame?
Ain't that weird?
Oh, my God. Yes, that's incredible. But now somebody started, but no, hold on. Somebody started a new nation, a new government, right? I don't know how much that is or if it is. And they go for that because they failed to study. So, you know, the prophet told you himself, sheiks are born not made. So, you know, like, you know, I don't even know what to say. But the fact that, listen, the fact that they can do what they want to do, but why they got to put us down?
Exactly.
We've been doing this
you ain't put forth this kind of work, kind of effort, and all about that. Oh, well, you know, we can't get no answer. I know when Ms. told me about a rodeo title, I didn't call and I didn't get upset with Ms. because I didn't get at him or he didn't get at me or anything like that. I knew my responsibility and my obligation was to me anyway. I got to study.
With that. Here's the problem with that. They can call some other so-called what they think is government and don't get an answer either. Get a for us, I'm gonna put it right out there. We're better done through texting. I mean not texting, email. That's what works best for us at this time. Period. End of story. Period. End of story. So, but if some other place they were going to that they think is a government doesn't answer the phone and gives them all of this stuff, press 1, press 2, this, that. They don't even say nothing about that. But they want to put something on us in that fashion. So, you know, they're just people who just, you know, they don't know what.
That's lower self-activity. That's all that is lower self-activity. That's just all that is. And I don't let it, like I said, I don't get distorted by it. It's just one of those things where it's pointed out to me, and I already got enough to do. I really do. And I don't need extra stuff because the bottom line is this. I am an active Moor. I am mother. And this is an uphill battle when it's your own family that you have to battle against. These modern Europeans is not the issue. I already know the game, so that's just the bottom line with that.
But it's
my family members insist on.
Why are they so intent on trying to make us a bad thing when we're
That's not Willie Finn. That's not Willie Lynch syndrome.
You didn't even know about a temple because they didn't. They and to this day, some of them won't even let you in the door. Why would they do that now? Because it's infiltration.
Well, one of the mothers from the temple up this way, I had called her because of a little study group that I was doing on a conference call where I was asked to do, and I didn't stop that because I ain't got time for people playing. Talk about, oh, did nobody get on because of the game. What game? What are you talking about? So anyway, I had text her as well, and she had text back, don't text my phone anymore with this. And I'm like, who is this? Because I'm thinking of someone that I actually knew of. And here it was, one of the mothers from the temple from up this way. And I hadn't seen her since my dad's homegoing. And she had, that day when I talked to her, she was like, you really should come back to the temple. And I was like, well, I really can't do that. She was like, well, why not? I said, because I know Prophet Noble Drew Ali. But y'all got another guy on the wall, and I've already shared this story enough times with the family. But, you know, she was like, well, no, he's the reason why the movement didn't get sold out. Are you kidding me? She said this to me. I'm like, okay, dude, he's the last prophet in these days and time. So how is there anybody else going to be represented in any of the so-called temples, first of all? And then how is it going to be his jitney driver? That don't make sense to me. Talking about he the reincarnated. And for her to sit there and try to tell me that he was the reason why the movement wasn't sold out, it just goes to show exactly what they're doing inside that building. They don't really know, and they're really, really casting people back into bondage. You know, I don't know if they willingly doing this, you know, or they just ignorant and just, you know, zombies. I don't get it.
It was the infiltration was done. It's over. It already happened. It's done.
Yeah.
And they are generationally whatever. No. So.
Yeah, so I just, like I said, that was just kicking around in my head. And I was grateful to be able to get on the line and just ask these questions because, and also, Ms., like you said, the kitchen and the government, oh, yes, indeed. I love your analogy, and I can't wait for the book to come out.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you appreciating that and catching the wisdom in that, and I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question for you. I didn't hear what you said that you looked up in the dictionary at the beginning of your last thing. What was that? Did you look up in the dictionary?
Theocracy.
Who?
Theocracy.
Oh, theocracy. Oh, yeah.
Okay. And the young man was insisting on saying, you know, well, that's our government. It's not the Constitution of America. And I was like, that's a contract that was put in place.
That's not cool. The prophet even told me should enforce it. So
it's like for us to be talking about upholding the Constitution of America, that's all Masonic law, and that's. I was like,
no,
dude.
No,
what are you talking about? That information, that contract was put together. It's a contract, okay? Yes, the prophet
look at how many.
The forethoughts of your go back to the ancient thoughts of your foremothers and forefathers. And if that means it's a theocracy, meaning your government is a government or your principles is ran by the Most High, I don't really like that word G-O-D because it just got too many connotative and deep connotative. I don't really deal with it too much because of the original definition of it, Austrian male. It could be gold, oil, and drugs. It could be generator, operator, destroyer. I just choose to say Most High and Allah. You know, it just lets you know that you're talking about, you know, the source. So when he got to speaking of these things, it just really, like, how can you say that the Constitution is not the law of this land? And that our government...
Because they don't have the history. Because history and law go together, period.
And check this out, too. Check it out, too. This goes to show you the further divide. Because at the same time, they're saying that, they're claiming to be citizens of the U.S.A.
Okay, right.
No. He's not. No. He's clear about that. He doesn't wish to be bothered with the corporation. However, he doesn't feel that the processes that he's gone through studying so far, and I can't really say that he studied much. Now, I don't know a lot of information that he's coming across now. I must say it must be divinely inspired, but then with that, then you couple it with information that come down the pipe, like this particular website or this group of Moors or, you know, however, you know. So I can't really knock him and say that he doesn't study because he does study. He is clear he's not a U.S. citizen. He knows that. He knows he's a Moor. You know, and he desires to be so much a Moor that, you know, he's trying to – it feels like he's trying to pick apart those who assisted him in getting clear.
No. Yeah, but maybe that's so. But what does he say he is? A Moor American national?
No, he says he's a Moor. He's a Moorish American. He knows he's a Moorish American. He's a Bay. That's what he chose.
So what? I'm asking you. So he says he's that. So that means he's a national, right?
Mm-hmm.
So national law is international law. So what law does he go by?
He's saying that he's going by a theocracy.
Well, then right there, that goes to show you he's not acting on national principle. Okay, no problem.
Okay, all right. You know, so like I said, myself, I was just
Did you have a comment that you were about to say, Miss?
What's that?
No, I think.
Hold on, say that again.
Did you have a comment you were about to say about that?
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say I'm pretty sure we probably got a couple more callers, and it's like 22 minutes left. Not to be funny, but we addressed this type of stuff too many times to already. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? These people are bugging. Okay, so you got people. No, it's not your fault.
Not you.
It's not even a bad at all. It's not a bad. But I'm just saying, you know what I mean? You know, like you got people in these so-called temples who are saying that you know, they're citizens of the U.S.A. Then you got other Moors who are saying, I'm not a part of none of that. I respect that. You know what I mean? You know, the self-determination is real, but, you know, I don't know what they're going through. Constitution, law of the land, because at the end of the day, if they're claiming to be a part of a theocratic government, all of that is protected by the First Amendment. So how is that secured where they got to respect it? You still need to know that Constitution. Because if you're talking about, you're a subject of God and, nobody has, and all of that, that's cool. But who's going to respect that as far as the law of the land without the First Amendment being in place? So, you know what I mean? That's just what it is. Because the Congress shall not make a law respecting or establishing, religious freedom. They can't legislate on it. So that's where the protection is at. You could claim all of that, but what's the protections? What's the self-executing constitutional provisions? First Amendment. So, simple. You know what I mean? It's simple. So I don't know what to say on that. You know what I mean? But it's many more.
There's really nothing that can be said except I trust you. I trust that whoever this person is will continue in his studies so that he can become a little bit more clearer. So we got like 20 minutes and we got a couple more people I really want to get to. But just thank you for bringing that up. I mean, that is all about just simple analysis. I mean, you don't even have to stick with it too long. Once I saw the sword over the head, I was like, So when you see the sword over the 5-pointed star, that's subjugation of mother. That's not Moorish at all. That's something else. I don't know what it is, and you know what? I ain't interested in finding out.
Islam. Thank you.
Islam. All right, our next caller is calling 972-839. You're live on the air. Please state your appellation at Northwest Mexican, and please be cognizant of the fact that we have about 15 minutes and there's a couple more callers.
Thank you.
Right.
Islam family.
Islam.
Bay from North Mexican, from the Texas territory. Once again, family, give all praise to Allah, to illustrious Prophet Noble Drew Ali, to Anani, Razmara, what's up, Ms. Round, Islam, my brother, and to Cujo. I don't hear his voice tonight.
He's there, he's listening.
Yeah, he wasn't with us tonight on the line.
Islam, peace be blessed and well. I'm reading out of Circle 7, divinely prepared by our Prophet Noble Drew Ali. And it states in chapter 26, Holy Instructions of Unity. And this here I'm reading for the upliftment of the Moor in history school. The gift of understanding are the treasures of Allah, and he appointed to everyone his portion, with the measure seemeth good unto himself. He had endowed thee with wisdom. Hath he enlightened thy mind with knowledge of truth? Communicated to the ignorant for their instruction. Communicated to the wise for their own improvement. True wisdom is less presuming than folly. The wise man doubted often and changes his mind. The fool is obstinate and doubted not. He knoweth all things, but his own ignorance.
Yes.
Islam. Peace and blessing. Harvey Bay Publications.
Islam, peace and love. Thank you.
Islam.
Wow. All right.
All right. Now, this caller doesn't have a number. It just says none. Caller, you are live on the air. Please state your appellation at Northwest Mexican. And please keep in mind we got a couple more callers, and we got about 10 more minutes.
Hi.
Islam?
Yes, I'm Amara Bay. I'm calling from Montreal. So I had a question about, youth protection services taking our children. Like when they do that, how do you even get them back? Like, yeah.
You gotta stand up and fight with the law. Are you the? I think this is the sister we're supposed to be contacting and aiding. Maybe I think tomorrow we can actually call her directly. Are you from up near Canaanland area?
Yeah.
All right, I have a number, and that's I don't even know how to answer that on this call right here. I don't know, Annie. What do you have to add to that? I mean, we can talk to her.
Look, you know what? The prophet said that we would be forced to make change, and he also said that, we'd be going through a conflict that cannot be told in words. And what you're asking, it can't be told in words because the only way you're going to know is once you start putting in the paperwork and going through the experience. And it may sound like a cop-out, and I've heard this before, because you can't explain it. It's like, okay, you have a child. Try and explain to a son everything that comes with being pregnant and having a child. He'll never, ever get it. Never, until he comes back as a woman and experiences himself. So I said all of that to say the only thing that I can tell you is I don't know how you found this information. I don't know how long you've been, aware of this information, but one of the things that we as people, we don't do is once you get this information, you're supposed to dive into knowing everything there is about it because your life literally depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only tell you from my experience, my issue wasn't the snatching of the kidnapping of a child. It was actually a kidnapping of my right to travel. I was terrified. I know it's not the same, but I was terrified. But somebody told me what to do, and even though I didn't want to do it myself, I did it, and I cried through the whole thing, but I did it. And what really got me going was when I realized in my studies they were literally violating my liberties, which are absolutely constitutionally secured. It was on and popping. But I only got there after I studied and realized these people is, they're really taking advantage of us because we don't have the necessary information. So my first thing was, I want to get as much information as I can. And, what was fortunate for me is I didn't have a situation when I came into this information. However, many people come into this information as a result of having a situation. So it's like you got to hit the floor running. I mean, do something, study. You see, I haven't had a time to really get into Canada and what their policy and procedures are. So I can't really advise you, but Cujo, I'm sure, can.
About the procedures, but he's never done that either. He's a guy.
You're right. Well, he knows the process. He knows the process, but she dropped off, and she's not going to be able to get in because it's after 11:30. But Cujo knows the procedures. He knows how, he knows how their so-called court system is set up. He knows, how I don't know that, right? So he can advise her from that perspective. But when it comes to the law and how she wants to present her case, she's the only one that's going to know that. Because, and it's funny because I was talking to a sister about this today. See, I don't know what the climate or situation is as it relates to the kidnapping of the children up in that area. So I might write a writ for her. I'm not saying I will. I'm just saying as an example. If I wrote a writ for her and I was slamming them, that might not benefit her because of the climate of that area. They may be more open having a dialogue rather than me coming in and slamming them. So I don't know that. And vice versa. I don't know that because I'm not in that area. I don't live there. I don't know what their policies or customs are. And I'm not saying that I need to follow their policies and customs, but you still have to know a little bit of what they are so that you can navigate lawfully around them. So that's a different. You can't. That's not a question that anybody can answer. Even if it was just a simple traffic issue, it's not something that anyone can answer. The first thing I will suggest is this, and that is to write out a cause of action. And anybody, if you have a situation, what you ought to do is write out a cause of action, because the cause of action will present to you what your strategy is. And that's about all I could say on that. And it's never failed me yet. So with that, we'll go to our next caller. I think our next caller is. What?
We'll call her tomorrow. I know she's off the line.
Okay. The next caller, 347-489. You're live on the air. Please state your appellation at Northwest New Mexico. Man, please be time. We got about 5 minutes left.
Islam family.
Islam.
This is Winston Demetrius Hope Bay. Miss hearing you guys. I want to ask Mother Roz, are you aware of the Pope's attorney, lawyer, suing the Congress?
No, tell us about it.
Oh, well, I can't get you on my computer.
Wait a minute, did you say the Pope?
His attorney.
Oh, no. The Pope doesn't have an attorney. That's all bullshit. A Pope does not have an attorney.
Well, the one that he used or is
no.
The civil oath.
Is the attorney's name Anna?
Anna, yeah.
That's not the Pope's attorney. That's some modern European running around here talking about she's speaking on behalf of the Pope. And people are running around and they're believing that. And what that says is you've never seen the Pope's letterhead. I mean, if you're going to pull the wool over somebody's eye, you might want to try using the Pope's actual letterhead.
Right. I came across that information the other day, and I was like, come on now. For real? I was like, well, I'm going to have to call in or either go to...
Well, let me ask you this. Here's just a simple question. Here's a simple question because you're probably not the only one that has seen that and misinterpreted it. But what would be the reason for the Pope of Vatican City be suing the Congress, the so-called Congress of the United States of America?
Yeah. Suing them for what?
Right. Suing them for what?
Well, I read the information, and some of the information that's in the so-called suit is bogus. It's crazy to me. So I said, well, I'm gonna call in and ask the mothers, have they heard of it or seen it? That's all. The only reason why I'm asking. I want to know if
this woman also supposedly, because there's people out there running around actually believing that she wrote a letter on behalf of the Pope to the President of the United States of America, which would be Obama, supposedly, telling him off, but not with foul language. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, first of all, I ain't never seen no women around the Pope. I mean, I'm sorry. The Pope ain't got no women doing jack for him. That was the first question mark. The second thing is, why would the Pope be writing to the President of the United States of America? Right. He doesn't give a rat's ass about the people. I mean, well, he does. He does. All right? But it is for the people here. It is for the people here to take a stand. See, that's the problem with our people. We're looking for that's mental conditioning. It ain't just with the so-called unconscious Moors, the so-called conscious Moors, too. Our mental conditioning says that, I'm looking for the Pope to come and do something for me, or I'm going to write to Queen Elizabeth or whatever her name is.
Right.
Do something for me. And I'm going to write to everybody and anybody except take the same time and energy and write a writ for myself.
Yeah. Right. So what I had planned to do, I said, well, if I don't get to call in or speak to the family, what I'll do is, if when my computer stopped acting up, I was going to try to send the information so that you can read it yourself and get laughed, because she's in there talking about Ted Bundy and all of this, and I'm like, what? That's a European.
They're Europeans, first of all. They're not the nationals here. They never can be the nationals here. And they've all been this is a great thing for me to say. They're all subjects of the British crown, right? Of the British or the English. And you got some people that are Moors that are calling themselves a prime minister of the Moorish nation, which is totally out of order, because that's a British title.
Oh my God, I've seen that too. And I'm like, oh my God.
So
then you have another guy that excuse me. He says he's a treaty Moor. He don't deal with the Constitution, and I'm like, I was on a call listening to him one day. I was like, oh my God, this guy is crazy.
It is a treaty.
I understand that, but he's just speaking of the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. He's not speaking of the treaty of the Constitution, but then he had said something about, well, you have to expatriate, and I was like, oh, hell no, I can't listen to no more of this.
The Constitution, they go together. You can't untie them.
Right, that's like somebody said.
There would be no Constitution, and the Constitution was adopted from our ancestors.
Right.
Right.
I understand that. But like I said, when he started talking and he was speaking of you have to expatriate from the United States, and I'm saying to myself in my mind, I said, well, then for you to expatriate, then you still going to place yourself in a non-status. To me,
and check this out. And that's like saying, if you're on the battlefield, you don't want to shield or you don't want two arms, because the Constitution secures or reinforces the fact that the treaty is valid via Article 6.
I understand that. It's just that, I've been, being that I haven't been at the Harlem Corporation in a while in person to see you guys, because I've been dealing with a lot of migraines because of the situation. Okay, well, I haven't been there in a while, so.
We're only there the second and the third, and the fourth week, which is tomorrow. Abdullah is there doing etymology, and that all came about because they had another group of people that needed to meet there, and they pushed us back to only 2 weeks, and then after that fell through or whatever, and then they want us to be back on all 4 weeks. So that's how that happened. The divine law. So I'm just telling you now, we're only there the second and third.
Second and third Wednesday.
Right now. Right now, we may
I was there when y'all first started the second and third, but before that, I was there when y'all was